To sprint or not to sprint? That is the question. Whether it's nobler in the minds to suffer the Halo 3 running of outrageous nostalgia, or to full tilt Halo 5 sprint into gunfire spraying you to death. Well, let's get into this video to find out. Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to address another Halo Controversies topic. Today we are covering the heated debate over sprint. Unless you're not aware because you've probably been living inside a cryptum.
This tomb is now yours.
This is one of the biggest controversies when it comes to Halo since it was introduced into Halo Reach 8 years ago.
8 years.
This issue is far more divisive than my last video about Halo having Battle Royale. In that video, I was going up against both the original trilogy elitists who wanted every Halo game's multiplayer to stay like Halo 3 mechanics and go with no further changes to any games going forward, and no new features or game modes added and so forth. And there were 343 elitists who will literally agree with any decision 343 goes with and tells anyone that disagrees to go play a different game if they don't 100% agree with 343 Industries all the time, because that is totally constructive and shows that you have a valid argument, right? But in this video, both original trilogy elitists and 343 elitists are at each other's throats on this issue and really have divided opinions amongst the community. There are those that want sprint to stay as is, like it is in Halo 5, and then there are those that want sprint to be removed entirely and to go back to Halo 3 days of no sprinting at all. Both sides have valid and invalid points, and though I could go into every point that is valid and invalid, I'm not going to make this video an hour long. I didn't even have time to go through millions of pages of people debating over sprint, but I'll go over the main ones that were and weren't valid. When it comes to me on which side I feel should Halo go with Halo Infinite and going on forward, I say neither. But you're probably saying that, wait, you have to pick a side. You either have to have sprint or you can't have sprint. You can't have neither. That's not possible. I'll explain my point and where I stand on this later, but let's go into both sides here. Both sides have strongly biased opinions that may have some valid points, but the elitists are so stubborn in their opinions that they think nothing to fix the sprint problem constructively and are going to just stonewall their opinions, and they think that they are in the right and will not budge on this issue. So I'm not here for those elitists on both sides. They will never be convinced.
This one is but flesh and faith, and is the more deluded.
I know I can't convince everyone who is too strongly opinionated on the subject, but hopefully for people that love Halo and are open-minded enough to hear me out, might be convinced on what I have to say and be surprised on what might actually work. Let's start off with those against sprint. Problem with sprint is even though you think it's making it go faster, in reality you're going about the same pace as Halo 3. There was a video showing this, showing that two identical maps, Midship and Truth, taking the same amount of time to get from point A to point B both times, with sprint's Halo 5 and with Halo 3's running. Thus you are moving slower in Halo 5's running when it comes to pacing versus Halo 3, which then means that you are sacrificing your ability to shoot to get somewhere quicker, when in reality you can get there the same amount of time when Halo 3 and still be able to shoot, thus making the sprint an illusion that you are getting somewhere quicker when in fact you are not. It only causes the maps to be stretched, and so it leaves the maps with a lot more open areas for people to get hosed down by the second a bullet hits them, and they can't get away for cover and they can't do anything sprinting wise, or else their shields won't recharge, which practically handicaps the player because now they are moving slower than the Halo 3 running. And on top of that, it leads to weapon placements needing to be adjusted, and for a lot that also are against sprint, they bring up the argument of sprint breaks the golden triangle of shoot, grenade, melee that Bungie said that they designed Halo around, and that removing it broke the flow and also broke the need for things like teleporters and man cannons. Thus you don't see these in any of the Halo multiplayer matches unless they're the forged ones or the ones made by the community that are also forged. Though I partially disagree with this because the Halo Golden Rule only did work for technically Halo CE, because Halo 2 and Halo 3, which was the most popular amongst most Halo fans when it came to the multiplayer, had dual wielding, which apparently other people argue that broke the Golden Rule, but yet dual wielding was in the game and people still love the multiplayer, so it's not entirely accurate to say that breaking the Golden Rule ruins the game. The rule only thus was around for Halo CE, but even then you had vehicles which technically also broke the rule. So I don't feel like the golden rule is an always must thing to be that can't ever be broken. Now those defending sprint, they say that we can't go back now that sprint was introduced, and they are for the most part right. It would feel really off if all of a sudden players went from, you know, Halo Reach all the way to Halo 5 being able to sprint, and then in Halo Infinite just went back to Halo 3. It just would not make a lot of sense for a lot of players, and a lot of players might not like it even if it is an illusion. So that would be an argument there that they just don't want that. You see how people reacted when dual wielding was gone?
Well, then everyone loses their minds.
There was no logical reason for a Spartan not to dual wield anymore when they were able to dual wield in previous Halo games, timeline wise, and also a lot of people actually liked dual wielding, even though there are competitors that don't. But I'm going to do another video for that another time. I'm not going to go into all the details on that one. And thus has become a necessity in most FPS shooter games today. People try to bring up Doom though, which yes is a great game and it doesn't have sprinting, but you forget the fact that in multiplayer and in campaign you are moving at an incredibly fast speed compared to what Halo 3's running is when it comes to terms of running around the map. And you have to realize that Doom is an arena shooter, and even though Halo loves to call itself arena and likes to put in modes called arena, at the end of the day it's not even close to relations to games like Quake, Unreal Tournament, and Doom and how they play, and also the fact that they don't have reloading and Halo does. But Doom is onto something with several games that I've thought of playing and how we can actually get something incorporated that might actually be able to fix some of the problems here, but I'll explain a little bit further on in the video on that. Some people try to also bring up Halo Online saying it's just Halo 3 on PC and it would do just fine because of how many people just jumped onto the game, totally ignoring the fact that Halo Online, even though is Halo 3, also has features of Halo Reach and Halo 4, which includes sprint. Yes, you can turn it off, but the fact of the matter is that you can't use it as an example because you can't monitor every game and see which was used more of sprint or without sprint, so you can't claim everyone was or wasn't using sprint. Just from me playing custom games alone, most of the sprint was in most of the custom games, so you can't use Halo Online as an example because we can't factor that in of which was used more, sprint or without sprint. People also bring up Mario and Zelda, how they've been classics and they have been able to keep the same kind of gameplay over and over, but the fact of the matter is those games were more about story. They didn't actually need to have to worry about all these multiplayer features. Even though they did have some multiplayer features, they didn't need to have to worry about that because they weren't a first-person shooter game and were more casually played rather than there's a side of also competitive with Halo, not just casual. So now it comes down to what do we do about this? There's negatives with both ends here, so how do we resolve it? And you're probably wondering what I meant by neither of the two. So, you know, what I see is here is I see neither in both at the same time, which means I think of an idea of a hybrid solution on this issue where it's both with sprint and without sprint at the same time. There's people against sprint and don't like it because it causes map stretching, weapon placement adjustments, disabling a player from being able to sprint by taking a small amount of damage, and you have to retain the set damage you have if you are sprinting immediately afterward. But we also can't go back from sprinting to no sprinting. We have to be realistic on these ideas here. We can't go back from Halo 5 all the way to Halo 3, and that's not going to be what the other half wants either. So these elitists that are too loved with the nostalgia of back in the day, thinking that somehow Halo Infinite with just Halo 3 repackaged will somehow just be good, perfect souls in today's market, and just think that they're going to live out the good old days, and somehow Halo's just going to be big all of a sudden just because they tell everyone they're going to remove one feature, and that's going to get everyone back onto it, and everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, one feature removed, that's going to make everything great, and Halo elitists will be sitting back and just be like,
did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
But let's address these complaints in a constructive manner. People don't like getting a tiny amount of damage done to them and immediately being stopped dead in their tracks only to be hosed down, but at the same time people don't like the idea of people being able to just quickly immediately sprinting away the second they get hit by heavy damage, and it could just run away and recharge their shields as they run away like they did in Halo 4 and Halo Reach. But others hate how you get hit by small arms fire and you can't charge your shields when sprinting, and due to the map size to incorporate sprint, you are left out in the open way too easy, making it frustrating for players who try and run instead of sprint. That additional 10 to 20% of speed from run to sprint for the sacrifice of your ability to fire or throw nades to get from point A to point B in the same time it takes to get in a Halo 3 map to do the same exact thing makes you feel much weaker, and sprint is just an illusion. Well, I propose an alternative to sprint. I propose that sprint should be made to be more of a utility rather than a feature by making it automatic rather than an in-game event trigger, rather than by just a simple press of a button to trigger it and that the player just has the ability to just instantly go, and instead you have to build up sprint. And by doing so, shield should recharge while sprinting, and instead of being instantly stopped by a single bullet, you will now be affected by stopping power damage. I know this is a lot to take in, but basically we are just incorporating two mechanics that exist in a few other games and now combining them with its own Halo uniqueness that may fix the gripes that people have with sprint without necessarily moving it, but at the same time it's not really sprint because it'll work differently. You would be taking something that would be like Gears of War stopping power when it comes to moving, and with Section 8 or Crackdown sprint mechanics, and mixing that together into one mechanic. So some will see this as sprint, some will see this as running, but by doing so, players will have the ability to be able to build up enough speed to go faster when they start running first, and after they accelerate to a sprint-like status, they will naturally occur without an instant trigger event through the press of a button with a terminal velocity as long as the player keeps moving, and if they stop or get enough stopping power damage applied to them, they have to start over. The amount of velocity, acceleration, speed, and stopping power and other variables will still need to be tested in a beta-like state on what feels right. When it comes to stopping power, depending on the damage being put on the player will affect the speed. If a player has full health and shields and is full in sprint mode, but gets hit by a sniper rifle or beam rifle, it will stop them back to a running speed plus the damage they normally take, of course. But for those something like a SMG, storm rifle, or anything with low damage per shot, they will not be affected as much, and you will have to do an equivalent damage to get the same effect to slow them down to a run speed. You'll still be slowing them down from a sprint to a run-like status gradually, but not immediately from a simple single weak shot. Because let's be real about the sprinting around the corners argument. If you hit them with a sniper rifle and they were far away from getting into cover nearby, you might have a point that you should get the kill and they shouldn't get away as easily. But if you hit them with a simple SMG round and they were sprinting into a nearby cover and that is not far away, you weren't going to get that kill anyway, and you just want them to stop sprinting to make it easier on yourself in getting that kill, which is not skillful, and that's just lazy and dependent.
Come on, you dumb apes! You want breakfast? You gotta catch him!
So anyways, you can't build sprint from an initial running while you're taking damage, as you will be affected by the stopping power, so the player being hit and is getting hurt will need to address the immediate threat. This will remove the problem of players immediately sprinting to a power weapon too quickly or being able to sprint away when they are starting to take damage. While at max sprint speed, players can still shoot, throw nades, and melee, so it's no longer like Halo 5 sprint where you can't do any of those, you can actually respond back. So all sprint would be is 120% to 110% running speed, so basically the game would be focused around map designs being based around regular 100% sprint that's similar to Halo 3, and so thus would be actually faster than Halo 5 sprinting, but yet still have its limitations. And so thus it would be more like the arenas of Doom, where you're moving at a faster pace if you're not taking any damage and you've built up the speed, making it more of on the competitive edge as well, while at the same time it's easy and understandable for casuals to understand it, so it's a win in both casual and competitive categories. And like I said, there's limitations that you have to build up sprint, and you also can't be taking any damage or else you're going to be slowing down due to stopping power. Players must be at a max sprint or 120% running, whatever you want to call it, to be capable of doing a shoulder charge, which thus makes sprint more of a rare occasion, a special occurrence. Therefore, it's not constantly something you'd always be seeing. Overall, this would fix the problems people hate about having sprint while still at the same time having the sprint mechanic and keeping other abilities like shoulder charge, sprint, and sliding in check. In thus doing so, we can get rid of map stretching, as sprint would be overall removed, and therefore we can go back to normal sized maps and not feel like, you know, you're fish out of water when you're in an open area and there's no effective cover. For people that want to play classic playlists or custom games without the enabled speed boost or whatever you want to call it, there is a virtual no change to the map in doing so, whereas Halo 5 having sprint at the press of a button require the maps to be much larger and caused issues with trying to have classic playlists without sprint because cover was harder to find and you'd have to adjust the speed in order to make it work out. Otherwise, as it's more spaced out from place to place, it would be difficult. Now a map can be designed just around the idea of running in mind and not sprint, as merely sprint would be this 110% to 120% speed boost, whatever it be, that would occur only in given situations that are not common occurrences and not just something that you think of right off the bat. So we can focus on making the maps designed around 100% running from Halo 3, but at the same time we get that speed boost in order to make the map gameplay feel faster, but still at the same time there are those limitations. This would also be something that casuals and new players can just easily adapt to, but the skilled players, it would also be providing more competitive arena matches and can use this to their advantage in faster paced shootouts with full on sprint while shooting and trying to hit each other and take down each other with damage to slow the other opponents down. Whoever gets the other person to a slowdown first has more likely the upper hand, making this a hand-to-eye coordination with a huge skill in order to have it, but without making the skill gap so drastic that casual and competitive players are vastly separated. Stopping power works great in Gears of War because if you are laying down the necessary firepower damage, you are practically stopping the enemy dead in their tracks when they are going to cover or for weapons on the maps if they try to just ignore you and try to go straight for that weapon while you're shooting at them. And with sprint incorporated as a build-up, like the games I mentioned, Crackdown and Sector 8, which I'll show gameplay here of how it works in those games, and also how stopping power works with Gears of War. So this makes players not able to just immediately get to a power weapon so quickly and not be affected by the rest of the map, and also addresses the annoyance of sprints of people just, getting away out of situations, but at the same time it still makes the map dynamics like man cannons, teleporters still a necessity, and all of this with an actual real sprint, not like a Halo 5 illusion sprint, but more of like a Doom-like running pace. And again, this all works as long as you are not being interrupted by being hit by any damage or slowing down intentionally to, get a weapon or something like that. And this would also affect elites as well if they were incorporated as a game, not just Spartans. Hopefully for those that have an open mind and can see what I'm trying to portray here for you guys, if you guys can imagine it, it would easily improve the gameplay for Halo's multiplayer, as you would feel like an actual super soldier in a suit of armor, as Spartans and elites should feel like. And I know that I can't convince those that are too strongly biased opinionated that won't open their minds to new ideas. And though I mentioned these elitist opinions and where they stand on this, I'm not making this video for them. I'm making this video for people who are open to new ideas on wanting to find a good resolution to make Halo better. So their opinions are not my focus here, and I don't really care what their opinions are because I've heard them a million times. So I'm here just to give my thoughts on this, on these controversial issues, and hopefully maybe I can get some people to actually see a different side of things and not just go with what the original trilogy elitists or the 343 elitists go with, and instead show that there's other ways of getting things to work and better ideas that we need to try out here, and not fall for these elitists fallacy arguments of like, don't try anything new, my way is better, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff that you always hear. We're not going to listen to their arguments, we're going to ignore them, and we're going to try new things that could be a good hit for Halo, and dispelling all these elitist fallacies and all these stonewalling and all these terrible arguments. But hopefully this addresses other, YouTubers and other people that are open to it, like maybe Fabian or Weapons Grid, with their issues with sprint. Devolving Halo's multiplayer isn't how Halo evolves. It's not going to bring back, people into Halo. Though this way it keeps sprint incorporated, but all it merely does is make it a faster upgraded running that addresses the annoyance and negatives of sprint in the past Halo games. It also doesn't break that golden rule that people keep bringing up annoyingly so many times, but which I still disagree with. But again, we'll go into that later in a video of dual wielding. But anyways, we need to learn to adapt to new changes and improve Halo and not stay stagnant. We have to be open to the idea of admitting that if Halo 3 were to be sold today, just like how Halo Online was, that there would be needing of improvements, including speed issues that would need to be addressed. We don't need it to be looking like it's running fast like Halo 5, but just a complete illusion. But we also can't have it like Halo 3 where it's constantly slow when people want more fast-paced of a feel, which my idea of building up actually does give that, and also addresses all those issues that people have with sprint and without sprint. So this would feel more like an evolved Halo 3 mechanic rather than an alteration like Halo 5, as this would be a player trait that is map dynamic. If you turn it off in settings for like a custom game, it literally does not change the need for the map size, as it is entirely a situational utility. So all those that say do away with sprint can just see this as an improvement to running, as is just a special little trait that happens as a reward if you don't take any damage, and that's it. And to those that say keep sprint, they can see this as an improvement as well, because even if you can't take off right away, it allows for players to be able to shoot and not instantly be stopped the second you take a sliver of damage. This avoids the controversial sprint of Halo 5 without something like just make run faster and remove sprint. Then you have to redesign the maps all over, as this only works for when you are in the right situation, as you will not always be going at max speed all the time. So you can see the difference of how this is beneficial, because if you just change it to 120% speed, they just redesign the entire map in order to fit that, and it would be the same thing as having a 10%. So it would do no good to just do away with sprint, as you would just get the same result with Halo 5 with sprint, with the same thing, and just taking the same amount of time to get somewhere, versus having this as a utility that you get rewarded for not taking any damage. It would actually just be something where you design the map around 100% speed, but you get 120% reward after a certain amount of time running without taking any damage. Just before we wrap things up here, I thought it would be best if I showed a visual of what I am suggesting, as I am not as good of a verbal explainer as I am visually. So I made a quick animation to help better convey what I am describing as a solution that addresses all the gripes that people have with sprint, while at the same time maintaining the importance of quicker movement mobility. I tested this idea in both Halo 3's Heretic map and Halo 5's Truth map by adjusting the speeds, gradually increasing it while running and hitting full speed by the time I get to a quarter of the way through the maps on both the maps. And I find that in both maps it felt very fluid, and yet kept the movement at a nice pace that was faster in Halo 3 and moving at a sprint-like speed in Halo 5, while without being locked in an animation, and it just felt so much more natural in both games. I'll probably test this later in on with an actual match if I can get people to test it out and, you know, follow the rules, but it's gonna be hard to kind of do that with everyone trying to follow the rules and without a way to mod it. But I just wanted at least get out a visual demo of this. That way you could see both through the animation and the gameplay tests by myself, you could see how it works. But I did find it's interesting that Halo 5 actually had options to make this somewhat work just without the gradual buildup, but maintained a 100% movement speed with a 120 forward speed, which makes me kind of wonder if 343 Industries had an idea like this in mind for Halo 5. Because of the fact that the options made it so easy to set up. As always, there's no perfect way to please everyone, as there will always be a downside, but this idea not only fixes all the issues most people brought up with very little downside to it, and this is very innovative, as it now is its own unique utility by implementing small features from other games, but made to function in its own unique way within Halo's gameplay sandbox. What we can see here is that, you know, there's with this animation, what would it have is some of the pros is no locked animation anymore. You're able to shoot, throw grenades, melee, all that sort of stuff, while at the same time maintaining a high speed that would have been like Halo 5 sprint, but be able to shoot. You're also moving at a faster movement. It's no longer an illusion like how you could see in the Halo 3 examples. I am moving actually at a faster speed, and it doesn't feel that bad, because at the end of the day, if I do get shot at, it's going to slow me down. So it you know, obviously has a counter to it. Also, running no longer feels like a hindrance if you're stopped, because you're still moving at a good pace. There's also no more map stretching to compensate for sprint anymore, so it's actually better now. You can actually not have to worry about these wide open maps. Also, there's faster gameplay now because of this, because you can move at faster speeds, but at the same time still have counters to it, so it's not like it's taking over the entire map, so it works perfectly. Also, you'll be able to recharge your shields while moving at a sprint-like speed. damage done to shields equals how fast you can move. So if you're taking a lot of damage, it's going to slow you down and you only move at 100% speed. Things like vehicles, man cannons, teleporters, lifts all still maintain their purpose of faster travel. Sprint is not removed, but rather revamped, so you can shoot and sprint at the enemies trying to sprint away. So if someone's like running away from you while you're shooting them, you can chase after them and shoot them down. So it's kind of a risk versus reward here. And also casuals and competitive players, new and old to Halo, can quickly understand how this is done and can understand how to play. If they're going to still keep Spartan abilities like they did in Halo 5 into Halo Infinite, they can obviously, while they maintain the max 20% speed, they can still be able to do Spartan charges, and they'll still be able to do aiming down sight as well and other stuff like that, but obviously not in the classic modes, as those would be turned off. So in classic, it would just be a regular melee and regular shooting if they're at 120% speed, but if it's for regular, then it would be Spartan charges and aiming down sights. And some of the cons here, of course, there's always going to be cons. You can't just instantly activate it and immediately go faster like previous Halo games and sprint. So that's one of the downsides, but it's not really that big of a downside. But I know some people will see it as that. If you don't do enough damage, then you have to hunt down your target. It's kind of, you know, punishing you if you don't use a large amount of damage. You can't do this thing anymore where you put a little AR or SMG round and the guy immediately stops. You have to actually earn it. If you don't put enough damage and work into it, you gotta hunt him down and kill him. But at least the good part is you can still chase after him, and if he's trying to sprint away, you can sprint right on after him and shoot him down. But that's the kind of punishment if you're not using something like a more powerful weapon, or you don't do enough damage with the AR or SMG. You also, again, you can't instantly activate. You have to actually build up, so that build up or charged up type of sprint to maintain that status. If you slow down or you get hit, you gotta start over. So that's some of the downsides there, but that's better than what it was before, where just one bullet stopped you and you immediately were just stopped dead out in the open. Like how I said about Doom, that didn't have, you know, locked in sprint, but you can run really fast. Well, now you can too, but you build up or charge up to that faster speed. I got the build up movement idea from games like Crackdown or Section 8 series. So as long as you are not taking fire or stopping or slowing down, you will maintain this faster speed. But like Gears of War introduced stopping power in Gears of War 2 because people were just roadie running away when they were getting shot at or going for a power weapon. This does the same exact thing. It addresses the same issues. The people are going straight to those power weapons or straight to those trying to get out of the way of the attacker shooting at them. So it's now damage based, so you need to put enough output damage to do enough input on the player's shields in order to slow them down. No more kills with one hit immediately stopping a player dead in their tracks. When it goes into your health, though, it's going to still just maintain a 100% running speed. So you are now moving like an actual super soldier, like an actual Spartan, without the illusion that you're going faster, as you actually are going faster, and the map sizes stay condensed. All the values of speed, velocity, acceleration, and so on are all going to be X values. They can all be adjusted and decided later on in testing and what's best. But this solution, I feel, is a great idea for Halo games going forward that will address the many current issues with sprint. So if you don't do a significant amount of damage to your opponent to slow them down before they get around a corner, that's on you as a player and must hunt them down. And you can still shoot him in the back if he is, you know, running away while you're both sprinting, while you both are sprinting as he is trying to run away. And if he doesn't bother to turn around and shoot back, which competitive players would be smart to do so, then you got that kill in the bag pretty much. So this does reward the player properly. If you did that significant amount of damage in the beginning, you get that kill, or you get that kill easier. But if you didn't do enough, you only slowed them down to how much damage you did to them with the stopping power. So no more 1-point damage immediately stopping the player from sprinting, and they can't get away because their shields won't recharge. And if they sprint and basically are giving that player an easy kill just for doing a small amount of damage, which wasn't fair, and that's why a lot of people didn't like sprint, from one of the many reasons. Now you have to truly earn it. But with this faster style of run and gun gameplay that both new and old players both can easily adapt to and understand, it not only makes it feel better for Halo, but would put other games' sprint mechanics to shame, as other sprints are just simple locked-in animation, while this is free-flowing and more innovative for both a casual and competitive aspect kept in mind. And if you want to do classic playlists, all you have to do is turn off the build-up sprint utility, and it stays at 100%, and the map size doesn't have to be compensated for that and have to worry about stretching issues on how far things are away and having to do that whole thing that Halo 5 was suffering when they tried to do classic playlists and had to use forged maps to compensate. All this in a simple utility that players don't need to activate. It just naturally happens as you play and as you're running along. Personally, after many thoughts on how to fix sprint with all the issues and coming to this idea, I feel like this is how Halo's movement should have evolved after Halo 3. It's not as drastic like the other Halo games that added sprint that were affecting the gameplay in a huge way. This is, very new, and it really seems to solve a lot of the problems here. And that's my thoughts on the issue of sprint and how they can improve it in a better way to fit Halo, to still make it skill but easy for new players to understand and address all the negatives of sprint, and all this without going either with strictly Halo 3 or Halo 5, but rather a new way to sprint that actually can work and play on the benefits of everyone in this situation. Anyways, if you have any suggestions or constructive criticism or any ideas of how you think sprint should be worked on or how it should be improved, leave a comment down below and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you all and have a great day.
Let's sprint this. Don't fall behind. Copy that.